So remember yesterday we talked about vmodel. So remember we just added in, say, an input, and we used this vmodel thing. Such that if you have a vmodel set up here, that whatever you type in here is also the same as whatever is seen here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can see now that vmodel is actually just like a again, it's one of these pieces of syntactic sugar where it's just making two things really simple. So vmodel is just the combination of a vbind of the value and a von input which sets value equal to $event dot target dot value. That's all this bit here. This is the same as vmodel. This does the same thing. I can show you this, because if we type out here now, you see the exact same behavior that we had before as vmodel. Does that kind of make you feel happier? Or maybe so vmodel isn't magic, basically.
Yeah.
It's just simplifying to other commands that we now know. The other thing now, whenever you look at someone else's VueJS code, you probably will not see vbind or von anywhere, despite the fact that they are the two most popular of these what's called directives. And the reason is that because they're so popular, they've actually got abbreviations that are used a lot. So vbind, this vbinding is used so often that by default you can actually just get rid of vbind and just write :value, and that's the same thing as vbind, which is kind of maybe a bit weird. And then von is so common that you can just change it to an @ sign like this, so you just get @input, and that is the same as von input. So we could change all of these to kind of the more popular syntax that you'll see basically everywhere you go. So, and we can still use it with stuff like this as well. So we can go @mouse move, and if we refresh all of that, then as you can see, everything still works exactly as we had it before. But this is maybe just a bit nicer to read. You don't have a load of v something everywhere. You just got these, so hopefully that makes sense. And whenever you look at other people's Vue code, you will probably see people using the syntax, so it's good to just make sure you're happy with it. Right, so that's all of events basically. So we can clear out all of this stuff now. We'll just get rid of methods as well. What I'm going to go over now are what's called computed properties and watch properties. So let's just add. Let's go back. So we've used methods now already before, and so these are methods, remember, that you can use to just call functions in your Vue.js instance. So we could have a method again that just says something like say hello, that returns a string that says say hello. Inside these methods, we can access stuff inside of our data property using the this keyword. So, if we've got something in here that's like name, and one of you speak up, because you're going to be the person, whoever speaks first gets their name in here.
Ben.
Yeah.
Okay. Ben gets to go in here. Ben, there you go. So we could also, for example, instead of doing this, we could also do say plus this dot name. I haven't put a plus sign in here though. And that would then return say Ben. And you can also, for example, if we had another method in here that was like get length of name that took in the name and returned this dot name dot length. I don't know why you'd ever do this, but you could. He's got to have commas between them. You can also, for example, console.log, and you can access again these functions also using the this keyword. So we could do this dot get length of name and pass in this dot name. So that's all fine. Actually, you wouldn't put in this there, would that kind of defeat the point? Yeah. So that the methods kind of all just work the way you would probably think
Rob,
they
just
would
a
work.
question there. In get length of name, the
Yep.
name that you're inputting into the function there is not the name of the data.
No. So yeah, in this case, so that was my mistake when I read it at first. So this name here, this corresponds to the name that's coming in from the function. So we could call this anything.
Data.
Yeah. So we could just call this any name, and then this would be any name. But then in the way I'm using it here on line 38, I'm passing in this dot name.
Yes.
But yeah, just make sure that you use this keyword. You don't. The important thing is you don't have to do this dot data dot name.
Yeah.
Which is what people might think, or doing this dot methods dot get length of name. You can just use this. Now, as we're going to find, there's actually some things that are better than methods. So one of the things you can do with methods is just like data properties, we can use them inside our string interpolation here, curly brackets. Just go say hello. Now you can't just, you have to remember this is not a data property, this is a function, so you still have to call it like this with your brackets at the end. But if you refresh that, you'll see it says say Ben, because Ben is this data property name that I set up here. So that I guess that kind of makes you guys happy-ish. Say now we add in say now we have another name, so we have name2, and we call this Dan. Dan's the second patch. You know, Mark, you can go set. We'll put all three of you down as separate names because we're going to show this slightly differently. And we'll do a say hello 2, which now returns say plus this dot name 2. By the way, we could also write these methods. We can remember this is just regular JavaScript, so we could write a function here that takes in again any name we like, and then pass in the name inside these brackets here. We could do that. I'm just choosing to do this way for demonstration purposes. So let's just do this for now. So we'll do that, and then we'll put in another one that says say hello to. Like that, and so now we get say Mark Ben, say Mark, apart from there's no space between say. And let's just put these inside of p tags just to make them look a bit nicer. And we know if I'm going too fast or too slow on any of this, by the way.
I've made an error somewhere. So when I'm trying to return the length of name,
yeah,
cannot read property length of undefined.
You make sure to pass in something into get length of name.
Get length of name. Yeah.
So you need to make sure that when you call this dot get length of name that you pass in a string like anything you like, really. In our case, I've just done this dot name when we were playing around with it.
Yeah, I copied you there. I've got this dot name as well.
Oh, okay. Did you make sure to define something in data up here?
I've got a few things. Let me try again.
Okay.
I get say undefined. Oh no, okay, I got it.
You have a typo.
Yeah, I missed out some data.
Okay, no worries.
Awesome, thank you.
That's all right. So yeah, so you have these. We have these two separate things now. Now say I add in. I don't know, what could I add in? I'll add in a button here. And on this button, I want to make it. I just set the button to be like change name to Dan. And what I'm going to do is on the click. So remember, I'm using @click here. what I'm going to do is I'm going to set name equal to, well, I'll just set name equal to, we've already set Dan as name 3, so I'll set name equal to name 3. So what do you think this is going to do? If one of you wants to have a guess at all of what this button is going to do.
It prints Dan.
Yeah, what's it going? But where's it going to print Dan?
Instead of say Ben and say Mark.
Instead of say Mark as well, because Mark is bound to name 2.
Okay, yeah, instead of Ben.
Yeah, so it's just going to say, let's just check this out. So we click it. Yeah, it says say Dan now. Now, something very, when we use functions like this, something very interesting is going to happen. So when the question is, when do these functions get called? So obviously, clearly, when we first load the page, if we put inside each of these functions, if we put in a console.log, say hello called, and we put inside of say hello to console.log, say hello to called, then clearly when the page loads, we need to call both functions because we need to evaluate the results. Now, when we click the change name to Dan, what do you think is going to be called? Do you think then neither of them are going to be called, one of them is going to be called, or both of them are going to be called? Of this say hello and say hello to, because clearly it's changing the name Ben to Dan on here. Anyone suggestions?
Sorry,
I can just click it. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
That's all right. So when we first refresh the page here, so I'm just going to reload it. You see that it dumps out say hello called and say hello to called.
Yeah.
This is because when the page first runs, of course it needs to go through and actually execute both these functions in order to get the value say Ben and say Mark.
Yeah.
Yep. Now when I'm just going to hide the console because I don't want to spoil the answer. So when I click the name here, change name to Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Say Ben changes to say Dan. Yep.
Yeah.
So clearly somewhere on here, VueJS is having to rerun this template again. Yeah. These methods are going to have to be re-executed. So the question is, do you think that none of these methods are run again? Do you think one of these methods is run again, or do you think both of these methods are run again? And I can just show the answer. That's easier.
Ooh, I really don't know.
Dan, you got any suggestions?
I'm like 30 seconds behind, so
That's all right.
no.
I'll drink
Give
my
me a
coffee.
sec.
I'll drink my coffee slowly. Oh.
So sorry, what's the question again?
So let me just do. So when we refresh the page, yep, from start. So I just click here and I go reload current page. Yep. When VueJS runs for the first time on the page, clearly it's having to kind of run down from the top and execute each one of these functions. So it's having to execute say hello, and we can tell this because why isn't my console showing up? You can see down here I put in these console.logs, and it says here say hello called and say hello to called.
Yeah.
So we know that it's running both these functions when we run the page.
Lovely.
The question is, when I click change name to Dan,
Yeah.
what do you think is going to happen with these functions? Because clearly the page has changed, so it's going to have to re-render the page. Do you think it's calling both of the functions, or one of the functions, or none of the functions?
So when you click the button, go name is equal to name 3. Why would it have to redo the page? Surely all you're doing is you're just changing the value of name in data to name 3, Dan. So just change Ben to Dan, but nothing will change. So Dan and wait.
So I think what you're kind of getting onto maybe is that you think, okay, so say hello clearly has to be rerun again because that's the one that says that we're changing the name of, because this .name is changing.
Why does it have to run again? What? But you haven't. Is that a v bind?
So whenever we maybe I didn't make this clear yesterday, but whenever data is changed,
Yeah.
So the way VueJS works is that it's listening for changes in data. So it's listening for whenever this stuff in data here is changed. And whenever stuff in data here is changed, what Vue does is it goes through this section of code here, which is the code that we've placed under Vue's control, and it basically runs through it from top to bottom, and it evaluates anything that it thinks is important between these curly braces.
I'm just doing it for each function, right?
So what I think we'll find here, maybe I'll just spoil it. But as you can see here, it says we get if we just run it from start flash here, we get say hello and say hello to are called when we load the page, because again, when the first time Vue loads, it has to run both these functions. Yep.
Yeah.
Then I change the name to Dan, but notice they both get called again. So say hello is called and say hello to is called again.
Yeah.
So clearly say hello has to be called again because this .name has changed. Yeah. But why does say hello to have to be called? Because we haven't changed this .name to.
Is it just the entire div get re-rendered?
Basically, yeah, that's exactly what happens. So when VueJS, whenever there's any change in data that Vue is detected, doesn't matter what it is, VueJS reruns everything, reevaluates all the statements between the div it controls.
Okay.
Which basically means because these are functions, VueJS doesn't know. So VueJS knows that something has changed, but VueJS doesn't know. It's not smart enough to work out that this .name to hasn't changed. So say hello to wouldn't necessarily have to be rerun.
Okay.
It reruns it anyway.
Yeah.
So that's something that's like very important. I'd make sure you like write that down or like get happy with that. We try a different example maybe just to clarify. So now we'll say we've got a button that's like increase. We've got a counter. I'm gonna steal another example from the website that they like to use because I am nothing but a plagiarizer. So we're gonna have a counter here, and then when we click the button, what do we want to do? We want to set counter plus equals 1. I think that's probably what we want to do, and then in here we'll put in a counter equals 0, and then we'll add in 2 counters. So we'll add in counter 2. Actually, I'll call this one second counter. So now what we have here, remember, is we've got 2 counters that go up and down. Yep.
Yeah.
We could also say, for example, tie these to methods. So instead of you'd never want to do this, but say just for educational purposes, we go like print, or actually, what could we do? What's something fun maths thing we could do with these counter numbers? I don't know really. Yeah, let's say we add in a method called double counter, which just multiplies the counter by 2.
Mm-hmm.
So this would just return this .counter times 2, and then we do double second counter, rather, that returns this .counter 2 times 2. And we'll just add these on here to the end here. So we'll do, because of course at the moment they're not getting called, so we're not going to see them. But we could also put in here double counter. But By the way, if you don't put you might think, maybe this is like with the events where you weren't supposed to put the brackets at the end. If you try doing that for this, you will not see what you expect. You'll just see it say like it just won't. Oh, yeah, I don't think it will render properly. It's because I've written returns actually. Yeah, it'll say this. You just get this. If you just print a function like this, you literally just get it saying function native code, which is probably not what you want. Oh, I've done my p token incorrectly as well. God, I'm off to a real rough start today. Right, and we're going to put in another one here called double second counter. So again, here now we've got it, and this is the value of this counter times 2, and then this one here, the second value is the counter times 2. And again, if I put in a console.log saying first counter changed, console.log second counter changed. You see that whenever we change any of the counters, both functions call. And that's the important thing here, is that so the entire, whenever you've got methods like this, the entire thing is getting rerun. Now here's the thing with Vue though. Vue is quite smart with these counters here. So the ones where we're just going straight from the data. VueJS is smarter. So with counter and counter 2 here, VueJS is smart enough to basically only re-render the things that have changed. So in the case of this, what Vue actually does when say counter 2 gets changed with this counter variable is it just reuses the value that it already knows cached in memory. It doesn't have to kind of recalculate it. So wouldn't it be nice if we can make it so that double count these functions only called when the things they depended on changed? Because then, if you think about it, if you think about this again in kind of like a grand scale, if you've got thousands of these components and thousands of these methods things in your application, then you could be wasting a lot of time and having to recalculate every single function when you've only changed one bit of data, and maybe only one function would need to be rerun, if that makes sense. So this is not a very efficient way of doing it.